Alright, we're going to be doing spark plugs on this 2017 F-150 with a 5.0. This will be the same for any of this body style, which I want to say is like 14 to 19, or pretty much any other engine with a 5 liter. You just might have less space or other things in the way. For tools, you're going to need an extension, spark plug socket, a flathead screwdriver, or the socket, which is probably a 7mm, to take the intake tube off. You don't necessarily have to, but it'll just get it out of your way. It'd be easier. And a ratchet and an 8mm socket for the coils. Ratchet size will just depend on whatever size sockets you have. You might need a 1/4 inch if you only have an 8 1/4, or a 1/2 inch if that's what your socket sizes are. Alright, so to get started, we're going to pop this intake tube off. So we're going to take the coolant hose, unclip it from that. I'm going to try and leave it hooked up. We're going to undo this clamp, we're going to undo this clamp, and we should be able to pop that out and just fish it out of the way to give us a little more room. Okay, I have these two clamps off. Now if we come to the back side, there's going to be these two hoses hooked up. It'll be, one's a vacuum hose, one's a PCV. So to undo these, there's just these, it's kind of hard to see, but these tabs, it's going to be really hard to do with one hand. So, like on the bottom of this one, there's this little lock here. You're just going to pry it away a little bit, and then you should be able to just disconnect it. So for this one, you'll push down on the top. When you push down on that, it'll shift that plastic piece in, which will unlock it. And then you can go ahead, fish your intake tube out, set that off to the side. Okay, and then we'll have 4 coils, 1, 2, 3, 4. Some guys will use a little pick on these as well, but as you can see, that little unlock tab I just slid up with my thumb. If it's stiff, you can go in there with a pick and get on the back side and lift up a little bit, and then you can push that tab through. But once you get that tab out, then you can just squeeze the clip and unplug the coil. So you'll end up doing that for all 4. I recommend doing one at a time, especially like if you have a misfire already, because if you have a misfire and it's on the, we'll say cylinder number 1, and you put everything back in the same place with new plugs in, and you still have a misfire on one, you know that coil hasn't moved. So then to further diagnose, you can always take that coil out of cylinder 1, put it in cylinder number 2 or 3, whatever is the easiest one for you to get to at that time, and see if the misfire follows that coil. If it does, then it's a coil related issue. If it doesn't, then you have another issue. So next, PCV hose is going to be in the way, but we're going to go through, we're going to pop this coil loose. Should not be very tight. Ford also recommends, I drove this here not long ago and just parked it, doing this on an engine that's warm to the touch but not fully up to operating temp. So hot enough that you can feel it when you touch it and it's warm, but not going to burn you. So you take that hose or that bolt out, and then the coil just pops right out of the hole. Your spark plug will be right down there. So now we grab spark plug socket, then extension, so one, to show you the clip, and two, just to make life a little easier, we're going to go ahead and take this PCV valve or hose off here. So if you look, the clip's the same. You're just going to push that tab and then pull. Put that off there. Now when you're installing new plugs, especially if you haven't done a lot of spark plugs, there are recommended torque specs. You'd use a torque wrench, put them back in, and torque them down to the whatever the foot-pounds Ford calls out for. I know it's super low. I think it's like 12 or something on these engines. I'd have to look that up. If you've done a ton of them, you can kind of just do it by feel. The plug's out. Now, you wouldn't have to have a special spark plug socket, but because like this one, a 5/8 socket would work. But actual spark plug sockets, see if you can see, it's going to be really hard to see it. Down in the base of the socket about here, there's a rubber O-ring, or some of the other ones are even just tapered, so it's smaller the further it goes in. And that holds your spark plug in the socket for you. So if you look, see if I can get this to focus. The plug's not great. It's not bad. The gap's a little big. Ford also changed the recommended gap from when these trucks first came out. I don't remember what the old gap was. I believe the new is 44 thou. Most plugs that you buy will come pre-gapped anyway. Because the like platinum and iridium plugs and all that, on the end of this electrode on the inside, you can kind of see that little, you have the needle there, and then straight across from it, there's like, it almost looks like a dab of solder, but that's whatever platinum or iridium or whatever material is actually soldered or welded on there. And if you change the gap, you risk breaking that off. So this had auto lights in it. I don't believe it would be Motorcraft if they were original. So at one point somebody's done spark plugs in this truck. It seems like the go-to everyone's running now is these NGK 6509s. So that's what we're going to run. But this truck's, I think, pushing somewhere right around the 200,000 mile mark. Runs great. Hasn't had any issues. And I know it's been the same owner of the truck since 115,000, I believe. And they haven't done spark plugs. So these things have at least 85, 90,000 miles on them. It's just time to go through and replace them all. Okay, try and give you a comparison. It's going to be really hard to tell with the bare eye. But, sorry about that. That is the gap there on the old plug. Versus the gap on the new plug. So by looking at them, especially in person, you can see there is a difference. The old plug is quite a bit more than the new plug. Okay, so the other thing I like to do when I'm putting new spark plugs in is just start with the extension of my hand. That's why it's nice to have one of these spark plug sockets, because it'll hold it in upside down. The other reason I do one at a time is you don't have all of your spark plug holes open in case you drop a coil bolt or something it can't fall down in. But I like to thread them in my hand until they touch, and then snug them down with a ratchet. Like I said, if you've done a ton of them, you can do it by feel. If not, I'll post the torque spec in the description below. And you can either, if you have a torque wrench, you can use that. If not, you can rent one at the most part stores and then get full price back when you return them. So there it is, bottomed out, just touching. Just snug it up. And then to go back together, I'm just going to go ahead, get that wire out of the way, put our coil down in, put our coil bolt back in, and those are a relatively low torque too. So I just spun it in by hand till it touched, and then snug it up. And then once that's done, go ahead, plug your coil back in. Once you feel it click, push your little locking tab back in, and then I always just give them a slight push to make sure they don't pop out. So this is the driver's side, all super easy to get to. You'll do the same for all four. Come over to the passenger side. You have a little bit more stuff in the way, like this wire harness, but if you look, that coil is clear, that coil is clear, and then these coolant hoses look like they're going to be a lot in the way. Once you get that bolt out, the coil will also clear there. So you'll just have to work around some coolant hoses and wire harnesses, but all in all, not too big of a deal. So you'll repeat the process for that first one for all of them. If I run into any snags where something's different, I'll grab a video of that and post it with this